In this video, we're going to work through a sim on variances. You should have this printed out in front of you so that we can easily look back and forth from the information to the questions that are asked on the page below here. The questions that are going to be ask us to determine some sales variances, so the selling price variance and the sales volume variance, the direct labor rate variance, direct labor efficiency variance, materials price variance, materials usage variance, and the variable overhead spending variance. So we're going to determine essentially both of the variances for selling, both available for direct, both available for materials, and only one of the four that we calculate for overhead. Okay, let's go back up and take a look at the information so that we can correctly calculate our selling variances here. If you've watched the video, then you already know how we set up the calculation for the selling variances. And I have those here on a spreadsheet. And then we just need to take a look at the information so that we know what to plug in where. I'm going to copy and paste the information very quickly. Okay, so I have the information in a very small format down here. Hopefully you have the worksheet printed out in front of you so that you can follow along a little bit more easily. And to calculate the actual units, to calculate the sales price variance, we need the actual units sold. And in the first line here it tells us actual units produced and sold for the quarter were 11,000. And then we're going to multiply that by, got the wrong place. We're going to multiply that by the actual selling price per unit minus the budgeted selling price. So as we continue to read, we're going to see that. In the second bullet point it says each unit was sold for $43 with a budgeted selling price of $44. So 43 minus 44. And then we're going to take 43 minus 44. That gives us a -1. Multiply that by 11,000. We should have a negative 11,000. But if you want to see the math, 43 minus 44 times 11,000. All right? And because this is a selling variance, the labels are going to be different than all of the other cost variances that we've done. When we do materials, labor, and manufacturing overhead, if we see a negative number, it means that it's favorable because we spent less or used less in materials than we thought that we were going to. But when we see a negative sales variance, then that's actually unfavorable, because it means we didn't sell as many units or we didn't sell them for as much as we had budgeted. So this is an unfavorable number. Then when we calculate the sales volume variance, here's our formula for this. The budgeted contribution margin per unit, and then we're going to multiply that by the actual units sold minus the budgeted units sold. So let's keep reading here. In bullet point number 3, it says the budgeted contribution margin for the quarter was $10.50. And then for the second part, we need to look at units sold. And if you remember, we covered that in the first bullet point. Actual units produced and sold for the quarter were 11,000. And the budgeted units were 8,000. A little bit hard to see there. Okay, and so 11,000 minus 8,000 is going to give me 3,000, and then I'm going to multiply that by my 1050. So when I do that, I should have a total of 31,500, and this is positive, and because it's positive, it's favorable since it's a selling variance. If this was one of our expense variances, it would be unfavorable. but a favorable variance here is something that's positive, and it means that we either sold more than we thought that we were going to, or we sold it for more than we thought that we were going to. In this case, since this is our sales volume variance, it means that the change is due to a change in volume. It has nothing to do with the selling price. This one has to do with the fact that we sold more units than we had budgeted for. The earlier variance that we looked at, the sales price variance, was unfavorable due strictly to selling price. In that one, we sold it for less than we thought we would. Here, we sold more units than we thought we would. And so the answer, when we flip back over, the answer to number 2, the selling price variance, is this first thing that we calculated here, negative 11,000. It's unfavorable. And the sales volume variance was 31,500 favorable. Okay? The next thing that we're asked to calculate is the direct labor rate variance and then the direct labor efficiency variance. So we'll scroll up here. Okay, we have labor variances up at the top, and the labor variances are nice because we can use our upside down pyramid. We can plug in our numbers and just kind of do one big calculation and then pick off the numbers that we need. And here, for the labor variances, we're going to need actual hours, actual rate, standard hours. We can pick up a lot of this information down here in the chart. We have direct labor hours, and it gives us the standard and the actual. So the actual hours, it says, were 10,000. And those go in 2 different places in our upside down pyramid here. And then the standard hours were 9,000. And you can see I've got my calculation automatically set up, so I'm going to take that out there. Okay. Then we have our rate, and the rate is the next line down. The labor rate per hour, the standard was 8. And the actual amount was $7.50. So in order to do that calculation, we need to multiply each of these subsets. So actually what I'm going to do is move these numbers up, and that will give me room to calculate these subsets. So 10,000 multiplied by 750, 10,000 multiplied by $8, and 9,000 multiplied by $8. Then we just subtract. We subtract from the left to the right. So the labor rate variance is going to be 75,000 minus 80,000. And the labor efficiency variance is going to be 80,000 minus 72,000. Labor rate variance is caused by a change in the actual rate that we pay compared to the standard rate. This is the only thing that can cause this variance. As you see, the number of hours worked are exactly the same. The only thing that is different in this calculation is the rate. And so we have a negative 5,000, which means we paid less than we thought that we were going to. And so we're going to have a favorable variance because it is negative. And then over here, I'm going to move my 8,000. And again, it's a situation where we can just use the upside down pyramid and pick the information off of the chart. So we're going to put in actual quantity, actual price, standard quantity. And the actual quantity of direct materials would be found down here in the chart on the third line. units of materials used in manufacturing. We have a standard column and an actual column, and I need the actual right now, 5,000. And that goes into my calculation twice. Then it wants, actually before I go on to the price, let's go ahead and put in the standard quantity while I'm working on that row. It says the standard quantity was 5,750. Let's go ahead and plug that in. There we go. All right, and then we're going to look at the price, and that's on the next line down in our table, price per unit of material. So it looks like the standard amount was $5, and that's going to go in two different places. And it looks like the actual amount was $5.35. That goes here under actual price. And then we're going to do a subcalculation to figure out the amount of each of our categories here. 5,000 times $5.35, 5,000 times $5, and 5,750 times $5. Then we just have to go through and subtract. We always subtract left to right. So 26,750 minus 25,000 gives us a price variance of 1,750. And I'm actually going to move that over here. And because that's positive, it's unfavorable. That is because we paid more than we thought that we would for our materials. The actual quantity has not changed. It's the same in both calculations. But the price we actually paid, $5.35, was greater than the standard price, or the price that we estimated that we would pay. And that caused us to have a materials price variance and make it unfavorable. Then we're going to do our subtraction again, this time for the quantity variance, 25,000 minus 28,750. That gives us a negative 3,750, which means it's favorable. And it's favorable because we would have spent less or used less. In this case, when we look at this calculation, we're using standard price in both situations. So it can't be the amount that we paid causing the difference. It has to be the quantity. And we're comparing actual quantity against standard quantity. That is what gives us the difference. We actually used 5,000 units, and we thought we were going to use 5,750 units. That gives us a favorable difference of 3,750 because we used less than we anticipated that we would. Now, I know it doesn't ask for the total materials variance, but if you were asked, you should know that you add these two together. And you have a negative 2,000, which makes our variance favorable because it means overall we spent less or used less, or a combination of both. All right, but if we flip back over to our problem, it says materials price variance, and the materials price variance is $1,750, unfavorable. And then materials usage variance, 28,000, nope, wrong line, negative 3,750, favorable. And finally, it wants our variable overhead spending variance. So we'll go back over here and calculate that. The actual variance that it wants is this one. But I'm going to go ahead and calculate all of them just so that you can see them worked through, and then that way if you get a question on one of them, you know where all of the numbers go. So if we go through and we look at what it wants actual quantity, actual price, standard quantity for variable overhead. And the fixed and variable overhead information is largely down here. It says that our standard amount is $3 per direct labor hour. Well, that is a standard price, and it's going to go in two different spots up here. And then it says the actual variable overhead was $33,000 $1,550. And that is a total, so I'm going to put that in here. Then we need to know our actual quantity and our standard quantity. Well, we know that we applied $3 per direct labor hour, so the actual quantity is going to be the direct labor hours actually used, and then we're going to multiply it by the standard price to get the amount for this subset. So the actual quantity will be the actual direct labor hours. So we come up here to direct labor hours, go over to the actual amount, and that was 10,000. Oops, too many zeros. Okay. And then to finish out the information we need for the third subset, I'm going to go ahead and grab that to finish up my calculation. And the standard quantity would have been the standard amount of hours we thought we were going to use, which would be 9,000. Okay, then we're going to calculate each subset. For the second subset, it's 10,000 times 3, and for this third subset, it's 9,000 times 3. Then we just subtract from left to right. So we take 33,350 minus 30,000, and that gets us the spending variance that was asked for. It's positive, so that means that it's unfavorable. And we know that this is our spending variance in two ways. Number one, that's how the chart is set up, and so we know that this one's always our spending variance. But we also know it because the difference in price is what causes the variance. We have the same actual quantity in both of these subsets. There's a total difference in price, right? Actual quantity, actual price, standard price. And so even though we only have the total for the first one, we know that the difference in this total from this total has to be due to a difference in price. And we know that since our first total is greater than our second total, it's unfavorable. It means that we spent more. Then we come over here, and the problem does not ask for the efficiency variance, but we're going to calculate it anyway, just so you know how. And again, we have our subsets. We subtract from left to right through 30,000 minus 27,000, 3,000. And actually, I need to label that unfavorable. There we go. And it's unfavorable because it's positive, and this time it's due to a volume, or in this case, quantity of hours. We spent more hours than we thought that we would, and that led to an efficiency variance that was unfavorable. And then if somebody asked us what the total variance was, we would add that spending variance to the efficiency variance, and we have a positive 6,350, which is unfavorable because it is positive. And those are the total variable manufacturing overhead variances. This ends the video for this sim. Please let me know if you have any questions.